you didn't come in at the beginning of this, hey, with Gloryhammer. You came in 2021. What was it like joining, what was already a pretty established band?
No, you're right. I came in pretty late on this in this trajectory of this band. So it was kind of for me best case scenario because I think a lot of people that try to make a living in music and not even that, like being heard to a wider audience, really struggle to find their audience, and it takes years of consistent effort in touring and you know being there for your audience and playing shows, and essentially this chance dropped to my lap at some point in 2021. um and yeah, like I saw it as having a chance to immediately be at a point where it would have taken a lot more effort to get normally. Like that's like kind of the selfish way to think about it, but it was very fortunate. I feel very, very lucky and privileged to have had this chance. But of course, like it was, I was replacing a band member that's like usually the focal point of the whole band in this kind of genre. So it was kind of tricky to approach this kind of transition because you don't want to be a copycat of the previous person, but you don't want to radically departure from what the existing sound of the band is. So that we had to find kind of a balance there so that we could like, appease the fans that expected a certain sound, but also, you know, like not have me be like a copy of something and be like my honest self. But I think we found that very early on, and people have been very accepting of of me coming into the band, and yeah, things look better than ever at the moment.
One second, I'm just going to turn off this fan. So the audience insane. Um, Hey, what
Hmm.
I was listening to Gloryhammer in the car this morning, and I felt like battling something. It made me want to battle something. Is that strange?
No, it's not. That's exactly the intended effect that we try to evoke.
What kind of crowd reactions do you see? I noticed you guys have just done a run of festivals over in throughout Europe. What kind of things do you
Um,
see in the audience?
so it's always nice to see like there's fans of Gloryhammer in every show that we played, and quite a few of them other like fans of Gloryhammer wear the shirts of Gloryhammer, but they could also like wear unicorn hats or like hold little hammers, or like they do their cosplay, which we really appreciate, and it's always like heartwarming to see them approach the shows. But there's always people that have not heard of Gloryhammer before, and that's very obvious when we show up on stage because they're like, "Huh? Why are these people dressed like, you know, like pirates and knights?" And it's always great to see that at the end of the show, there's always more fists up in the air than the beginning of the show. So there's always people going like, "Huh," and then, "Oh, I think I get it," and then by the end having loads of fun. And we've seen that in every show we've played, uh, more so in the festivals because those are spaces where you don't always have your own band's fans. There's people that have heard of you there, but it's mostly people that have come for the headliners. Um, and so yeah, it's always like great to see that kind of reaction to us.
Have you heard of an Australian band called Battlesnake?
Battlesnake? No, I haven't heard of them.
Australian power metal, full costumes. Yeah, type that. It just enjoy.
I am
Um,
going to look it up.
they, yeah, when they came on stage recently, I saw them for the first time. I did not know them from a bar, so I imagine the look on my face was priceless. And I think it's seven guys all wearing priest robes came out and started just hammering out the most hammy power metal you can possibly imagine.
That sounds
It's
brilliant.
righteous. You are going to love it. Um, Hey, who do you think obviously you get around festivals a bit, and I think you'd be very qualified to to kind of call it how you see it, who do you think, once the bands like, Metallica and Iron Maiden retire, who do you see as being the big, as filling the stadiums in the future?
Ooh, okay. So I might be a bit biased because we are working with them, but I see like objectively speaking, the trajectory points are that way, and I think it's Beast in Black. Beast in Black is the next band. I think that's the people in it have are veterans of the scene, but they're not old like Metallica are old. Like they have a good like 2 decades of at least um, of upwards trajectory, and they are expert songwriters. So I think Beast in Black will be one of those bands that fill stadiums because also their music is very conducive to it. They play like essentially arena power metal, but of course, there's also like Sabaton and Powerwolf, which already play arenas and fill stadiums. And I consider these bands that like this is sort of like the highest point that a power metal band can reach, like realistically, unless something happens and everyone starts listening to power metal. I think that's where our goals is as Gloryhammer. But I think Beast in Black might will reach that, I think, and might even surpass it.
Time will tell. Mate, what were the biggest the album is fantastic. It's got this great theme going through it, and you've okay. Firstly, what were the biggest challenges in making it? And secondly, how important do you think the themes and images and visuals are to the genre of power metal?
Hmm. So, one of the challenges for me personally was to convince like the listener that I was in fact the same character that was present in the previous albums because the previous vocalist had this like very distinct tone, but like everyone's voice is different and it's not like always feasible or even desirable to emulate the exact tone of like of a person. So what I found challenging, and I think in the end we managed to do with like a team effort, it was to write an album, like write the vocals in an album that convincingly state that this character is the prince that has always been part of the Gloryhammer lore. This is just the latest iteration of that person. So I think we've managed to do like a pretty convincing job, even though that like the voice is obviously not the same, so no one would confuse me for the previous vocalist. But the spirit of the character and the ideals that the character embodies are the same. And like that was quite tricky. Like it was a balancing act to keep enough things from the previous vocalist that you could say that this is the same essentially character, this same person, but have like a voice that is uniquely my own, which is you wouldn't want to compromise on your own voice. And sorry, what was the second question?
Uh, the how important do you think the like kind of the visuals and themes are to the genre of power metal?
Right. So I think presentation is a very, very big part. So I think the themes that power metal employs are almost as important as the sonic signature of power metal. So like we think of fast drums and like blistering solos and high vocals, but I think if the imagery is I love you and like that's it, like that's the generic theme, that wouldn't make it power metal unless there's like context surrounding it that makes the song make sense. Because power metal is trying to be larger than life, and some very, it's not very often, but sometimes bands can achieve that, and they can achieve in one album to transcend the limits of more like mortal men and women and become something more and embody the ideals that they sing about. And I think if that's missing, like if there is no big evil and like the forces of good versus evil, or some conflict that's like could be even philosophical in nature, but if there is no like larger than life theme behind the music, I think that makes it power metal adjacent rather than power metal. It makes it like a different genre that sounds like power metal rather than power metal itself.
Yeah. Oh, fair. What how recently did this album come out? Sorry, was that this year or?
Yes, the album came out in June this year.
Yeah, cool. How what is your next year or so looking like? Like when do you think you might start? Do you have even ideas brewing perhaps for another release?
Yeah, we have quite a few ideas. We are already working on the next release. But because these things, like we want the albums that we put out to be cohesive. So it takes quite a while for them to gel together as, as one album rather than a series of songs. But that's why we started really early. We don't think there will be, there won't be a full album release in the next year, because that's like very, very, very soon in the scope of an album. But we're already working on writing new material, and there's a lot of ideas flying. But we know the general direction, and like I am very excited to go that way, because this is the first album that I'm fully going to be part of writing. Because the previous album, there were quite a lot of parts that were already written before I joined the band. This one, I'm going to have full, creative freedom to interact with the compositions, and I'm like really looking forward to that.
Nice. Oh man, awesome. And congratulations on the album, and I hope you enjoy Australia. It is a wonderful country. And
Looking
yeah,
forward to
man,
it.
thank you very much for your time.
Yeah. Thank you for having me.
Easy.